Act only according to that maxim by which you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. Freedom is not the absence of rules but the obedience to laws one gives to oneself through reason. Morality is not learned through happiness but through duty, and duty does not ask whether it will please us, only whether it is right. A good will is not good because of what it affects or accomplishes, but because of its willing, because of its inner principle. Two things fill the mind with ever-increasing admiration and awe: the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me. Enlightenment is man's emergence from his self-incurred immaturity, an immaturity caused not by lack of understanding but by lack of courage to use one's own reason. Dare to know, have the courage to use your own understanding. Experience without theory is blind, but theory without experience is mere intellectual play. Thoughts without content are empty, intuitions without concepts are blind. Science is organized knowledge, wisdom is organized life. We are not rich by what we possess but by what we can do without. The happiness of the greatest number cannot justify injustice toward even a single rational being. Treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of another, always as an end and never merely as a means. Inclinations may tempt the heart, but only reason commands the will. Character is built not by comfort but by resistance to desire. The moral worth of an action lies not in the result but in the intention from which it is done. Law without morality is empty, morality without law is blind. He who makes himself a worm cannot complain afterward if he is stepped on. Out of the crooked timber of humanity, no straight thing was ever made. Even the pursuit of happiness must submit to the authority of reason. Man feels himself constrained to assume a moral law, and in doing so, he becomes aware of freedom. Freedom is the condition under which alone the moral law is possible. The worth of a man lies in what he reveres. Passion is an illness of the mind that reason must cure, not excuse. Reason's task is not to increase happiness but to make us worthy of it. Laziness and cowardice are the reasons why so many people remain minors all their lives. The mind that seeks comfort before truth will never find either. Peace is not merely the absence of war but the presence of justice grounded in law. A lie destroys the dignity of humanity within oneself. To be truthful in all matters is a sacred and unconditional command of reason. The illusion of knowledge is more dangerous than ignorance itself. Skepticism is the resting place of reason, but not its home. Metaphysics is a battlefield of endless disputes because it forgets the limits of human reason. Human understanding begins with experience but does not arise solely from it. Space and time are not things in themselves but forms of our intuition. Reason must know its limits in order to know its power. Morality does not depend on religion, but religion must depend on morality. Faith without moral conduct is superstition dressed as devotion. Discipline is the bridge between animal instinct and human dignity. Education does not make man, but man becomes man only through education. Children should be taught to think, not what to think. He who is cruel to animals becomes hard also in his dealings with men. Respect is not demanded by force but earned through moral consistency. The greatest enemy of enlightenment is the comfort of obedience. Authority without reason is tyranny, and reason without freedom is slavery. The human being is not a thing to be used but a person to be respected. Even suffering gains meaning when endured for duty. Prudence may advise, but morality commands. The mind that submits blindly loses its right to judge. Immorality is not a mistake of knowledge but a failure of will. Hope is reason's response to uncertainty. The purpose of history is the gradual realization of freedom through law. Conflict sharpens reason, but only justice preserves peace. A state that ignores morality destroys itself from within. Rights are meaningless without duties, and duties are empty without freedom. Happiness pursued without moral limits becomes self-destruction. Reason alone can never make us happy, but without reason happiness becomes dangerous. The dignity of man rests in his capacity to act according to principles. A lie may save time, but it steals truth from the future. To obey moral law is not oppression but self-respect. Wisdom begins where desire ends. No one is free who is a slave to inclination. The conscience is reason judging itself. Courage is the decision to follow reason despite fear. The highest good unites virtue and happiness, but virtue must come first. Humanity progresses not by comfort but by moral struggle. The voice of duty is quiet but irresistible. Even silence can be immoral when truth is owed. True respect is shown not in praise but in justice. The mind that refuses discipline becomes chaotic. Freedom without responsibility is mere impulse. Reason does not flatter, it commands. The moral law does not promise reward, only worth. Self-knowledge begins with recognizing one's limits. To think is to judge, and to judge is to choose responsibility. A human being must never be sacrificed for convenience. The temptation to lie is strongest where truth is most needed. Enlightenment is a slow process, but regression is always immediate. A society that mocks morality prepares its own collapse. Duty gives life meaning when pleasure fails. The true measure of progress is moral maturity, not technological advance. To respect oneself is the beginning of all virtue. Reason does not bend to desire, it disciplines it. The human being becomes moral not by instinct but by choice guided by law. Duty often appears harsh only because inclination resists it. A promise is sacred because it binds the future through reason. To break one's word is to fracture trust itself. Moral strength is measured not by victory but by restraint. Inclination seeks comfort, reason seeks worth. A person who excuses wrongdoing weakens the moral law for all. The authority of conscience does not come from fear but from respect. Freedom is not doing what one wants, but wanting what one ought to do. Even error has dignity when born of honest reason. To use another merely as a tool is to deny their humanity. Respect for law begins with respect for oneself. The moral law speaks in absolutes because dignity allows no exceptions. The more a person reflects, the more responsibility they discover. Reason demands consistency where desire demands excuse. A rational being cannot escape morality without escaping humanity itself. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom but its condition. The will becomes corrupt when it serves happiness before duty. Justice delayed is not only injustice to others but corruption of law itself. The mind that trades truth for advantage forfeits its own authority. To act morally is to act as if one's choice were to become a law for all. Even solitude cannot free one from duty. Moral failure is not weakness of mind but surrender of will. The greatest danger to ethics is the belief that circumstances excuse principle. Habit may train behavior, but only reason forms character. Law gains legitimacy only when grounded in moral autonomy. The human being is both subject to law and its author through reason. To command oneself is the highest form of authority. Fear may restrain action, but only respect restrains intention. A society without moral education breeds clever criminals, not citizens. The pursuit of pleasure without principle dissolves into emptiness. Reason does not promise ease, only coherence. The worth of an action is invisible to the senses but clear to conscience. To be moral is not to be flawless, but to be accountable. Inclination argues loudly, duty whispers firmly. The temptation to justify oneself is the first step toward moral decay. Freedom demands effort, not permission. The moral law does not bend to culture, fashion, or desire. To respect another is to acknowledge limits to one's own will. The highest courage is obedience to reason against the crowd. Moral autonomy is the foundation of all human rights. Without respect for persons, progress is illusion. The value of a human being cannot be calculated, only honored. Reason condemns cruelty even when it profits. To deny duty is to deny dignity. The inner court of conscience never closes. A lie told for convenience teaches the will to betray itself. Moral law does not negotiate, it obliges. The more power one holds, the heavier the duty becomes. Reason seeks universality because dignity is universal. A person who follows duty stands upright even in defeat. The conscience is not softened by success nor silenced by applause. To live morally is to live deliberately. Habit may dull awareness, but duty restores clarity. The human being rises above nature only by submitting to law of reason. Moral responsibility cannot be delegated. Even ignorance does not absolve the refusal to think. Enlightenment begins the moment one refuses blind obedience. To think for oneself is the first moral act. Respect is owed not because of talent or rank but because of humanity. The moral law shines brightest when desire grows darkest. The dignity of reason survives even in suffering. To act from duty is to affirm freedom. A world without moral law would be orderly but meaningless. The greatest rebellion is obedience to reason in an irrational age. Duty does not promise happiness, but it makes life worthy.